Hi and welcome to another Stax video tutorial. This time we're going to have a look at how to add validation to your Stax forms. Validation helps ensure that you get the data that you're after by making sure the value that the user's entered conforms to a certain pattern. So I've loaded up our test application, and the first thing I'm going to do is give our submit button a human readable name. So in the controls panel, I'm just going to click into the name field and I'm going to type in submit button and then hit enter. The next thing I'm going to want to do is add a group which is going to contain our form fields. These are the fields that the user will enter the values into, and after they hit submit they'll be passed over to the database. So I've added the group and I'm just dragging in the form fields now. And I'm going to add a total of 3 to this form. So skipping ahead a little, you can see that I've added my 3 form fields and I've also added some styling to them. The next thing I'm going to want to do is name the individual form fields. Now this isn't a prerequisite, but it will make life easier when trying to identify each of the fields, and also when it comes to the layout of the reports when you do post-campaign analysis. So I've selected the field and I'm going to type in the name of the first field, which is name field, and hit enter. And I'm going to repeat the same operation for the other 2 fields. So I've clicked the email field, into the name in the controls panel, and then email address. Okay, hit enter. And then finally for the age form field, click on it, into the controls panel, and then type in age field and hit enter, and that's named the 3 fields. Also, whilst I'm about naming things, I'm going to click on the group and change the name of the group as well. So same process, I've clicked on the group, gone into the controls panel, clicked into the name and typed in field group. So now I've named all the fields and groups, the next thing to do is tell the Stax platform which button is going to be responsible for passing the data from each form field. So what I need to do is click on each form field again and then go down to the for field at the bottom of the controls panel, and if I click the drop down I should be able to see my submit button, and there it is. So all I need to do is make sure the field's selected, go to the for field, click the drop down and then select the submit button. Now whilst I'm in this part of the controls panel, I can also add the validation to the form. So just below the for drop down there's another field called validate. If I click on validate, there'll be a number of different choices available. So we can pick the type of validation from a list of either standard, that just means it needs to have a value, numeric, that means that the value entered has to be a number, email address, which means it has to conform to the standard email format, internet address, which means it has to conform to the standard HTTP, HTTPS style format, and finally we have textual, which means it has to contain only text characters from A to Z. So for our first field I'm going to select standard, and I'm going to make it mandatory, which means they have to enter something. Then I'm going to click on email address and again set the for option for the submit button. Then down in validation, going to set it to email address and make it mandatory, so they have to enter a field. And then finally clicking on age, going to set up the action so it's submitted on the submit button. And then again down in validation, I'm going to select numeric and also make that mandatory. So that's the validation setup on the form now. So I'm going to want to try this out. So I'll go up to the publish menu and then go down to publish, confirm all the dialogues, and then flip over to my browser so I can see the validation working. So here I've got my web browser open with the page loaded, and here's our form, and what I'm going to do is type in my name and then just go down to submit, and we can see straight away that the platform's picked up that there's no email address, or that the email address format was wrong, and there's also no age entry. So let's just go back and fill in those fields and then try submitting it again. So I'm going to type in an email address format and then also a numeric value for age and hit submit. And this time we should see that it goes through, and there we are. And that's all there is to adding form validation to your Stax application. I hope this was useful.